What's going on, guys? Thank you so much for joining us on another episode for Living in El Paso. And in this episode, I want to talk to you guys about something that many clients have been experiencing right now, and that's PCS season is amongst us, right? Now, I was really alarmed when I heard that there's companies out there that are essentially charging our VA clients fees for what they are calling a actual technology fee. What does this mean? Bogus fees, literally. Bogus fees that they're trying to charge you as the consumer in order for them to make more money. And this is where working with the right team really comes into play. Whether you're looking to invest in the El Paso market, whether you're looking to invest in any market, look at the fine print, because there's a lot of mortgage companies out there that they will give you a breakdown of what your closing cost will be, what, let's say you choose to pay the down payment, and we'll talk about this shortly, but you choose to pay a down payment, let's say you do a buy down, and they're having their lender fees. There's additional fees that are incorporated there, and if you don't have somebody that is truly breaking everything down for you, you can be on your way to essentially pay additional fees that nobody else is paying for, but because you're not asking, they're adding those fees. So with that being said, let's dive deep today. And number one that I want to go over, when you're looking to relocate, obviously make sure you're working with the right company. And there's a few videos that we've already done that discuss this, but for update purposes and just to make sure that you guys are aware of the new things that are going on, I'm going to break those down again. Number one is vet your agency. This is extremely important any place you're looking to actually invest in, because if you're not working with somebody that, number one, has your best interest, that's like above all, but number two, has knowledge of the market, you're setting yourself up for failure. I've seen it time and time again where people go with a company because they were recommended to them by, let's say, I don't know, a Facebook group or a family friend that maybe is related to that person, and you don't do your own research. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to be a one size fits all, that everybody's going to be the same, but it has happened multiple times where we have people that leave the agency they were working with, leave the realtor they were working with, and they tell us, hey, you know what, I decided not to move forward with them because we didn't feel they had our best interest in mind. And here's a fun fact for you that I feel a lot of people don't realize. Most people sometimes decide, I'm gonna call the agent that's on the listing. And hear me out on this, because if you don't understand it, you can also fall victim of just being in a situation where it's not in your family's best interest. And it happened recently, actually. Super sweet couple came up to us and basically they left the agency they were working with. So my lender got me in touch with them and they were like, hey, you wanna work with them? You know, call them, see if they're interested in working with you. They essentially were taken advantage by the previous company. The agent was the one representing seller. Their VA, these clients, they have never purchased a home in the past. So all they knew was, I want to buy a home. They called the advertisement that was outside of the house, right? That says call now for you to get more information about the house. And when they did that, they fall in love with the house. They decide to go under contract. They do the inspections. And if you have not seen the last video, we go over the key components that a great agency is going to want to negotiate for you. So I'll have us link that below in the description. But essentially, they did the inspection, and when the inspection came about, they found out there was mold in the house. Now, this is where it gets interesting because, yes, granted, there's some molds that can be very minor, and then there's some molds that can be very severe, to basically simplify it here. But we're not an expert for that, right? Like, now you need to pay for an expert to go and assess the situation. Well, my now clients essentially told the agent, which again was the listing agent for this property, they were concerned about this. And the listing agent essentially says, there's nothing to worry about. It's not a mold that can cause any problems. Okay, I was not aware that we have the title of being experts in the mold industry, but apparently she felt compelled to say that. And essentially my, again, clients now that at that time were not working with me, essentially say, well, this is a concern to us and we don't really feel comfortable proceeding with the purchase of this home without this being fixed. Well, obviously, this is what you need to understand. When you're reaching out to the agent that is representing the seller, they have a fiduciary duty to that seller, not to you as a buyer. And here's where a lot of people, unless you're an investor and you're gonna go straight to them because you're not gonna ask for any repairs, you're not gonna ask for any concessions, you don't want them to negotiate for you, go for it. There's nothing that you really need to negotiate there. But if you're in a situation where you're a buyer and you're going to the listing agent, you're putting yourself and you're setting yourself up for failure because of the fact that what's going to happen is they're going to end up saying, hey, this is a property, and because we're negotiating for the seller, they're not going to want to push for the other side to essentially be open to negotiating repairs, closing costs, incentives, whatever the case might be. Now, I am going to add a quick note there because I have had some clients where I'm representing the seller and the buyer, and here is the only times that you should feel comfortable enough to do that. Number one, if you've already vetted your realtor or your agency before even starting to look for your houses. And number two, as the agency that's representing you, I need to be completely transparent with the fact that my seller already has a bottom line with their permission for me to share this with you for us to come to what they call a meeting of the minds. This is where, for me personally, if I have a listing that's gonna work for one of my buyers, I'm gonna let you know about it, but I am not going to, as the agent that's representing the seller, I am not going to put you in that situation if I know my listing is not willing to pay any closing costs. This is where you really doing your research comes into play, because if I was, again, in the example as what they encountered, just in the best interest of my seller, because I did not know you before this, I am having a fiduciary duty to them to negotiate for them. Therefore, if you come and tell me, hey, Alexa, I'm interested in your listing, I'm going to present the offer based off what you're telling me, but I'm not going to give you any additional nuggets, if you will, any additional feedback that could really put you at an advantage on this listing, because again, I have a contract with the seller to have their best interest in mind. Now, again, that's why I mentioned to you that if you're in a situation where you do have your agency already, you're working with this realtor, you're working with this agency, and now all of a sudden they tell you, hey, we do have a listing that meets everything you're looking for, then at that point just ask them, okay, do you think your sellers are going to be willing to help me with closing costs? Are you willing to ask them about X, Y, and Z? And for the most part, they are going to be very upfront. I've honestly had some great deals that work very smoothly because I have access to both. We're just communicating in a very effortless way, and everybody feels comfortable because we knew from the beginning, before going under contract, this is what we need, this is what we're asking for. Can we come to a meeting of the minds? If so, let's proceed. If not, let's not even make an offer, okay? Now, with that being said, this is where it's so important for you to really determine who you're going to reach out to, because if you just call, especially when you're PCSing and you're just starting to look for properties on Zillow, Realtor.com, you're calling people on Zillow, for instance. I'll give you an example. This is what happens. A lot of people are not aware of it, so I'm going to share with you. You enter your information on Zillow, and Zillow is going to sell your information to a agency. We do not like to work with agencies like Zillow, not saying anything bad about them, but personally, we like to build brand awareness. Therefore, the clients that we work with are coming to us based off what you're doing right now, consuming our content, and then from there, you actually end up liking us and you end up trusting us, and we end up working together. But a lot of agencies out there, they do pay for leads, and with these companies, the moment that you enter your information, they're selling it to several different agencies, several different realtors. So why is this important? Well, because a lot of the times, these realtors also represent the seller, and the last thing you want is to be in a situation as to what I just explained to you happened to these clients. At the end of the day, they didn't feel taken care of by this company, and they're actually a pretty big company here where I'm from. And the owner called them and it's like, hey, I'm so sorry you felt pressured by our agent, let me be the one to take care of you. At this point, I'm gonna quote my client, she was like, there was already bad blood. I did not want to work with them. So this is the last thing you want. She spent money on the inspections, she spent money on the earnest money. There was things that she now forfeited simply because she worked with the wrong company. And you might be saying, well, how is that fair to her? This is why it's so important to do your research and work with people that have your best interests in mind versus somebody else's. Okay, now that my rant's over, let's go into step number two. Step number two, now that you have the right agency, Your lender is extremely important. And here's where that thing that I was telling you about with the little technology fee is coming into play. There's lenders out there that are either newer in the industry, or they're simply just trying to take advantage and trying to add additional fees and justify them as marketing expenses, as technology fees, whatever you want to call them. Because they're disclosing it to you, they are still walking in between what's legal, but that's just not what's right. And this is where you want to make sure you know who you're working with. I have this one lender that essentially she will do whatever she possibly can to make the deal work. There's been times where she walks away from the deal with no money, literally like this is how she gets paid, right? Closing files for the mortgage. And she'll walk away with nothing because she was trying to make the deal work. I've had situations like that too, where we had to make it work because the client was very transparent with us, because the client did everything that they could, and they were just not able to make some things work. And we honestly know that all of that comes back to us. When we pay it forward, things come back. Those clients that we've done situations like that with, man, they're like our raving fans. They're always sharing like, oh my gosh, they're the best, right? Anyways, I deviate. But the reason I share this with you is because you want to make sure you're working with an agency that is going to connect you with the right lenders. The right lenders are super important in this. If you don't have the right company that you're working with in terms of your actual numbers, the mortgage, what it is that they're going to give you monthly, this could really affect you because they could have given you additional incentives that maybe you were not aware of, or maybe the realtor that got you in touch with a mortgage company only worked with one company, and it's happened many times. They only work with one company, and then at the end of the day, what happens is that they say, I'm sorry, you don't qualify. That actually happened recently with one of our files, VA. They came from another company before they had found us, and essentially what happened is that they said, I'm sorry, we can't get you qualified. This company is really heavily invested in the veteran market. I'm not gonna say their names, but it's something with United. And essentially what happened is that they ended up not qualifying them. So after that happens, the client is discouraged, obviously, but they saw one of our posts that we had. They reached out, my assistant got us in touch. Long story short, we were able to get them qualified. Their credit was at a 600, but the credit that the company needed was only above a 640 and above. So literally for 40 points, they said no to them. Being a veteran, they rejected them. We have programs where as long as you are above a 580, they will allow you to qualify, which is essential when it comes to your journey in home ownership. Now, number 3, you've got the right agency, you've got everything situated when it comes to your mortgage company. Now, realistically, you want to make sure that they're looking for options that are fitting your need. What do I mean by this? Okay, so there's been situations where clients need closing costs, and this can range anywhere from $7,000 to $20,000, whatever the case might be. Now, with that being said, if you have the right agency working with you, now you know your numbers. Our job is to really find you the deal that's going to make sense. So if I have a client that's telling me, Alexa, I'm VA, I'm not going to pay for the down payment because again, you get to roll it in case you are ever told you don't pay a down payment, please correct them. You do pay a down payment. It's just rolled into your mortgage loan, which is really helpful for a lot of people. I just don't like when they've lied to my clients and they say, oh, you don't have a down payment. No, you roll it into the down payment, into the loan. Okay. So with that being said, what happens is that let's say my client tells me, Alexa, I'm really interested in this house. The only thing is that I don't have closing costs. Like I have $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, whatever the case might be, set aside for my moving expenses. And as you know, moving can be pretty expensive. So the reason this is important is because if you're letting your agency know, hey, this is what I need for closing cost contribution minimum, then our job is to find you a listing that we know we can match you with that is going to be willing to help you with your closing cost. Now, let me make a quick little tip there. The market is shifty, okay? So depending on when you're watching this video, obviously right now we're in February 2024, but depending on when you're watching it, the interest rates are going to continue to drop. Why am I saying this? Well, the feds have already announced this, and they're not saying it directly, oh, interest rates in the market for the houses are going to drop, but you need to follow the trail. You need to follow the evidence that has been left behind for decades. And essentially what happens in the market, everything that goes down has to come up, everything that comes up has to come down. Why is this important for you? Well, because right now we're still in a situation where people don't qualify necessarily for the houses that they once wanted, so they're still waiting for the rates to drop. The reason they're doing that is not because they want to, it's because they simply didn't qualify for the house that they want. I'll give you an example. I had a client They were qualified at one point for $500,000, but after the rates increased, we couldn't find them something that they were looking for. The wife had something very particular in mind that they wanted. Well, after the rates increased, the lender said, I'm sorry, but now we only qualify you for $400,000. That was a punch for them because they're like, no, I wanted the $500,000. Now you just took away $100,000 from my leverage of what I can buy. So obviously, these clients, they have been waiting, not because they didn't want to buy, but because they couldn't buy. So I want you to picture like literally the gates right now, still like the cost to enter still pretty high. As the interest rates are dropping, open up the floodgates, right? I'm like picturing that in my head, but they're starting to gradually open and allow more buyers in the market. As this happens, more competition is going to arise and less leverage that you as the buyer has currently is going to start to arise. Why? Because now the sellers are going to receive more offers as the buyers continue to open up the floodgates, come into the market, okay? This is where I want to get very descriptive with you because, oh my God, it's so frustrating when people just base it off of what the media is saying and they don't do their own research. Because then a repetition of what happened in COVID, where literally the rates were as low as we've seen, historically speaking, and people waited because they were afraid, right? They were afraid, uncertainty, which of course I understand, it's an uncertain time, but this is why it's important to do your research, because if you did your research, which we educated a lot of our clients and we said, look, I know it can be a little scary, but you're getting great rates, and you know that you want to have a house, you need a place to live in, you're paying 100% interest right now in you renting, let's move forward as long as it makes sense for you. They did, and they made the best investment for most of them that they've made in their life, because they felt like, I am getting a great interest rate and this is perfect, and they got into their houses. Now, opposite side of that, right? A lot of people, they're like, oh my gosh, the rates are so high now, I'm gonna wait for them to drop. They're forgetting the fact that in COVID, although they got really good rates, they had to pay a lot above asking price on a lot of houses. Now hear me out, I bought a house in COVID, so I've done it in both markets. I recently just bought another house, and I did that because I was taking advantage of the incentives that I was able to get now in this market. But even in that market, even overpaying and not getting closing costs, my perspective as an investor, and this is what I want to leave you with, everybody's in a different perspective, right? Everybody has different opinions. But depending on your situation, if you are an investor, the number one thing you're focused on is your return throughout a certain amount of time, right? So the way I see it is, I want to invest in real estate, even if at the beginning I paid a little bit more, because the appreciation over time is going to compensate and off balance that, right? It's going to balance it out. Right now, the same thing is happening. People are like, oh no, I'm going to wait until the interest rates drop. Okay, cool. Do that, but then the first example that we just talked about happens, leverage goes down, but two, you're losing out because now the inflation is still happening. Like whether you're buying or not, the market is moving. This is the reality of it. Market is moving. Now, when that happens, the value of the home continues to appreciate. And now, let's say you buy it at the end of this year, your values are still going to be higher than what you would have paid now. Therefore, even if your interest rate was lower, you're still paying more because of the fact that your interest rate is still going to be based off, again, the market, but now you're buying a house that is worth more. Does that make sense? Anyways, I hope this video helped. As you know, we are constantly uploading our playlist to just give you guys more resources, more value. We do have partners throughout the United States. So if maybe you're not looking to buy particularly in El Paso, you're PCSing to another area, Florida, Colorado, Tennessee, wherever it might be, we have partners throughout. So please let us know if there's anything we can help you with. We do have a free buyer and seller guide that we put together. This is a free book that we have for our clients. We will link the links below for you to access those and claim your free book. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video again. If you have any questions, please comment down below. And as always, I hope you have a fantastic day.